Yes. So first of all, I want to say Aquanina Toamag, that's peace be unto your family, the owl and two clouds and to the chief there. Always excited to see some of our Algonquian family. And excited to be here from the invitation from Fordham as well. As was expressed, I was able to found a company, the Providence Cultural Equity Initiative, which is a cultural consultancy firm based out of here in Providence, Rhode Island, that really pushes cultural equity in the fields of academia, the arts, food and beverage, and tourism. And our basic sort of foundational concept is that culture and cultural diversity are just as much of a natural resource as our oceans are, as our trees are, as anything that we treat as a natural resource, and that it should be cultivated, developed, and implemented as such. So I was able to get a innovation fellowship from a local foundation because apparently that was an innovative idea to people. And I think as Indigenous folks, we know that, culture is really just kind of a part of our everyday life and how we get by and how we make it through. So it's very interesting that people who, I guess, don't relate or don't necessarily connect to Indigenous backgrounds or histories or cultures find culture of such interest that they're willing to invest in it to try to see how it could be something that's beneficial.
Can you just give a little of your background, your historic background, your ancestry?
Sure. So I am of Narragansett descent, which is the traditional way to say it. The English corruption is Narragansett. My particular tribe is the Mashipog tribe, which is in the northern part of the state. Most people are more familiar with my cousins down in the South County area, who are the federally recognized Narragansett Indian tribe. In terms of bloodlines, my great-grandfather was George Red Fox Watson. He was chief of the tribe in 1980s when they got federal recognition. My fourth great-grandfather was Chief Brister Michael, who was chief of the tribe in 1881 when the state of Rhode Island illegally detribalized us. And then his wife, Mary Champlin, was direct lineage from Canonicus, who was the pre-colonial sachem of the Narragansett Nation, who along with my Aunt Nomi greeted the Pilgrims when they landed here and was involved in the King Philip's War and all that good stuff. So going all the way back to pre-colonial times, and really looking at, in particular, Rhode Island, it does not do a great job of honoring or celebrating any other culture other than colonial cultures. So if you ride around the city or through the state, you'll see all of this colonial architecture. You'll see all of the type of building, you'll see monuments and statues. But if you don't know that there are Indians around, then you won't know that there are Indians around. They don't do anything to kind of highlight or showcase us. And I really got the idea from traveling to Mexico City. My wife is Purépecha out of the Michoacan region of Mexico. Her family's out of the city of Morelia, and then she was born in Mexico City. But in traveling on our honeymoon, I kind of got down there and was just floored by the way they utilize their cultural heritage along with their colonial heritage to really serve as an economic driver and a tourism attractor. So knowing all of the history that we have here in the state and in New England in general, because they only give us like certain storylines. When they talk about Thanksgiving, it's Thanksgiving where the Pilgrims came and had Thanksgiving with the Indians, which is the reverse of the story. When they talk about colonization, they kind of almost try to pitch as if, everyone was getting along and then somehow, some way, the colonists just ended up in control of everything. They never go into the details or the politics of things. And I just saw all of our rich history here in New England in particular as something that other people around the world would be interested in learning about and even coming to visit and kind of experience if we cultivated it as such. So that's where—
So I just want you to watch your mic because I think something's hitting it and it sounds muffled also. And also your picture's shaking.
It could be me. I'm kind of nervous while I'm talking, so I apologize.
Yeah, so we're all like intently listening. We're very happy that you're here and people did want to talk to you, so you're among friends. But how does this all relate to the business that you have decided to create for Rhode Island? What is it? What is the intent?
Sure. So our intent is to really develop and lead the cultural sector and economy here. And I think a large part of the problem is that other people see value in our cultures. They come and take from them all the time, utilize them in their products, utilize them in their clothing, whatever the case may be. It's just that we, in my opinion, don't necessarily see or utilize our culture to be beneficial to us in the manner that it can. So when we're talking about culture, the first thing we're talking about is the fact that culture is a tremendous economic driver. And I say this because there's this sector called cultural tourism, which is different from heritage tourism, leisure tourism. It's 78% of all visitors to the US on an annual basis, about 118 million visitors per year, to the tune of, I think, about $136 billion annually to the US economy. And when they come, they're coming because they want a specific experience. They want to engage with a specific monument or some sort of heritage. And all of that comes specifically from culture. So when you fly to Mexico City to visit the Pyramid of the Sun, that's cultural tourism. If you go to Egypt to visit the pyramids there, that's cultural tourism. If you go to Machu Picchu, all of these places that are very unique places, they come out of a culture and a history and a heritage of a specific group of people. And what we're saying is, since it's such a big economy, our cultural resources should be developed in order to tap into that economy. Now, when you're tapping into that economy, of course, you want to make sure that you're doing it authentically. You want to make sure you're doing it appropriately. But in our opinion, the best people to be leading a cultural sector are the cultural practitioners and cultural communities that are the sort of foundational elements of that sector. So we start to look at these things in terms of tourism, in terms of arts. If you're in the arts field, you know the real buzzword right now is cultural equity. But when you get into a conversation about cultural equity, no one really knows what they're talking about. So we've gone into actually presenting definitions around that. We held a number of ongoing cultural convenings to create a cultural guidebook, which was straight from feedback from all of the cultural practitioners and artists around here who are looking to add cultural elements into their work. And then getting feedback from local institutions who want to know how they can engage with culture, but want to do it appropriately on what they're looking for. And we came up with a set of best practices that we've been disseminating. So we do that as well, consulting just in terms of corporate culture and things of that nature, and just really kind of informing people about what a tremendous element culture is. Now, the most exciting aspect of culture, and I think most relevant to the discussion we're having, is the ability for culture to mitigate against racism. And the example that I always use is, if you look at the experience of the Irish next to the American Indian in relation to the English, and they're almost twins. You know, they were traditional cultures, they were tribal, they had chiefs, they were warriors, and they were both colonized by the English. So you would imagine that when the Irish get into a similar space with the American Indians, there would be a lot of connections there, support, and just building with each other, especially in terms of dealing with English. But because we live in a racial society, the Irish become white, the Indians become colored or other or whatever label you want to give, and then the English and the Irish have a relationship and the Indians are on the outside. So when you start to examine things from a cultural perspective, you get to the actual experiences that people have, and it allows them to see other people outside of just the color of their skin or what their phenotype is or whatever preconceived notions come along with that, and to get into who these people actually are. And we know that specifically here in the Northeast, there's a lot of racial misclassification that went on. So we're not only battling sharing our culture, but also battling the policies and practices that were put in place to remove us from who we are. And with PCEI, we're utilizing culture and cultural exchange as the most key element to achieve that goal.
Give me an example of a cultural tour that you might want to sponsor,
Oh, sure.
Something that's not going to give up an idea to somebody else.
Absolutely. So right now we've started actually doing, we call them Meshanticut Cultural Heritage Tours, because Meshanticut was the general area of the Providence and Cranston area in pre-colonial times. And we do a King Philip's War North tour, a King Philip's War South tour, and then a Mushasik area tour. And these are all going around to the various different locations that are of indigenous heritage here that were important to our people prior to colonization, and giving them some of the background, some of the original names that were utilized with them, and then relating that to what's going on today. So what we're finding is that, especially in this day and age, especially when you have situations going on with the type of presidential administration that we have right now, and just the impact that they're having in terms of how the rest of the world views the US, we're finding a lot of people wanting to know more about this history that they were very unaware of. A little while back, about a month ago, I was very heavily involved with the Pokanoket repatriation of the lands at Brown. And I was just amazed at how many people from the local community were coming out saying, hey, I never knew this. I never knew this history. I never knew this was going on. Can you share it with me? And, you know, once you get people wanting to know, well, there's all of the opportunity right there. So if people want to know, then perhaps there should be a Pokanoket museum there at the land where people can come and pay a little fee to really learn about what's going on with the Pokanokets. So we're seeing a lot of doors opened up in that regard, and just people wanting to know about colonial heritage, because we all know the narrative that we've been fed has not been the narrative of what actually took place.
Exactly. So I remember a few years back, I put a historic marker in Doylestown marking the Lenape trails. So I just want to say I want to honor the Lenape people, which is on the land upon which the school is, and in Manhattan, which is where we are located. And so we need to really honor the ancestors of the Lenape people, and I want to do that right now. So I do have the speaker standing by. So I don't know if you would mind one question from the audience. Would you
Absolutely.
mind? No, I mean the other speaker.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all right, great. All right, so does anybody have a question? Go ahead.
I believe you talked about healthcare or another type of business initiative. I was just wondering if you could just talk about how you set up the business, either this business or the healthcare, just briefly. I found that to be quite
Oh, sure. So we're working through tribal trust, according to not federal tribal trust, but Hague Trust Treaty standards. And through federal policy, because we have the trust set up, we're actually able to charter our own businesses through the tribe and then register them with the state as foreign corporations. So that's the strategy that we went through. There's also a policy out there federally called Urban Indian Policy and an Urban Indian Status. So we've been able to utilize these policies that are out there. And when you read federal mandates and things of that nature, most of it is focused particularly on federally recognized Native Americans. But if you read deep enough into the policy, you will find the urban Indian elements that are in there. And we just utilize these elements to, first of all, let them know who we are by sharing what our history and our lineages are, and then let them know what we're trying to do in terms of developing in commerce. I think commerce is a very key and very important element of anything that we're doing as Indigenous peoples, because if we have all of our history, if we know everything that happened to us, if we know all of our rights, but we can't do anything to make a better day for ourselves, then 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're in the same place where we know all of this stuff that happened to us. We know all of our rights, but we're still struggling to try to make a better day for ourselves. So that's where we're at. We're very much in favor of trying new and innovative ways to create better opportunities for our people. And this particular company that I've started is just one of many others that we're hoping to collectively be working on to continue to present new pathways.
Are we able to keep in touch with you going forward if someone or a tribal out there would like to?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach me at ray@provcei.org. You can also check out the Providence Cultural Equity Initiative at provcei.org as well. And I'm on Facebook, Raymond L. Watson. I'm all over Facebook. I live on there, man. I've been on since 2004. So, but I'm all around, and I do see a couple of the brothers there that I've had the opportunity to interact with. What's going on, Two Clouds? How you doing, brother? What's going on, Owl? So yeah, I'm around. Please feel free to shoot me a message. Hit me on Instagram, Two Hawks Says, TWOHAWKSSAYS. And I'm always happy to engage and share and learn from others as well.